I'll try to remember to keep looking. I'm bad, because I wander, I look around.
Oh, that's okay, it's fine. Hello everyone, thank you so much for coming. This is our second time we've had Joy, and we had so much fun the first time. If you haven't already, there's food in the back. Help yourself, please, there's plenty. She's got 2 new books to talk about this time, and she's a local author in Wisconsin. Where in Wisconsin?
Near Madison.
Okay,
Yeah.
so yeah, local enough to Crystal Lake.
Okay.
So yeah, we look forward to Joy coming back. So thank you all for coming. Really appreciate it. And Joy Ribar.
Thanks, Diane.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Thanks for coming out on a Saturday. I know it's Saturday in summer, people have a lot of things to do. I'm gonna get upstaged by George. I'm pretty sure that's what's gonna happen. It's okay. We like George anyway. Okay, so yes, I'm a Wisconsin author, and my mysteries do take place in Wisconsin, but I feel like there's really not a whole lot of difference if you look at Wisconsin, Illinois, Michigan, Minnesota. We're kind of a same kind of people, same kind of lifestyle, definitely the same climate with 4 seasons, and a lot of lake communities, and I think it's all very similar and relatable. So my first series is the Deep Lakes Mystery Series, and this is the newest book that just came out in May. And my main character, for those of you who don't know, Frankie Champagne, she is a baker and a vintner. So she runs the Bubble and Bake in a little lake town in Wisconsin, and it's a bakery by day and a wine lounge by night. I thought if I were ever gonna run a business, that's what I'd wanna do. But instead of running it, I thought it'd be more fun and easier to write about it than run it myself. So I have a really good time with her and her Bubble and Bake crew. And when the series starts off, Frankie, she's very much an amateur sleuth. She kind of stumbles into a local murder that may or may not be a murder. She isn't sure, but it's a mysterious death. She kind of stumbles into it. She decides that she wants to show up the local newspaper editor because he wouldn't hire her to be a reporter. And so in her fantasy life, she'd love to be an investigative reporter. That's what she went to school for. But because he won't hire her, she decides to investigate on her own, and that's the beginning of her amateur sleuth sideline that follows through the entire series. And the further the series goes on, the more of her Bubble and Bake crew end up kind of joining her in the sleuthing. So she ends up having a lot of help, and they're all very fun people. There's a couple of fun, naughty aunties that come into the book and are into the series in the second book. And they were supposed to just be visiting aunts. One of them is Frankie's aunt, who breezes in from California. She's very much a free spirit left over from the hippie era, and she she shows up with a boatload of baggage, and she didn't tell anyone she was coming. No one knows how long she's gonna stay, and so Frankie puts her to work in the bakery. And then Frankie's business partner Carmen's aunt, shows up from Texas, and so that she can get some experimental eye medication as a trial medication to help her with her eye problems. And it's all through the University of Wisconsin in Madison, which has a very big medical, very well known for its medical prowess. So that's why she comes to town. Well, she ends up working in the bakery too. And together the 2 aunts cause a little bit of trouble. They're kind of naughty. They're full of personality, and so many people fell in love with them. They said, well, you're going to keep them in the series, right? So they're still here. Yeah, they're not going anywhere because they're just too much fun. When we get to book 5, Frankie is planning her daughter's wedding, and the daughter's wedding is going to take place in her vineyard, and so she's very busy getting ready for that. But there's always a but. Couple of things are going on. One thing is that this very strange, mysterious illness starts paying a visit and plaguing the entire community of Deep Lakes along with the county. And people are sort of dropping like flies and nobody knows what the cause of this mystery illness is. And Frankie wants to sideline that whole idea until her daughter, who is an emergency room nurse, ends up smack in the middle of this health crisis. And now Frankie feels like, boy, the wedding could be in jeopardy if she doesn't help get to the bottom of the health crisis too, even though she doesn't know anything about health diseases, but she's got a lot of suspicion about where is this illness coming from and what's causing it, because it's only in their community. So she feels like she's got something to get to the bottom of. The other problem is that her longtime boyfriend now, who is the coroner, who she also uses to help get to the bottom of some of her mysteries, well, he's been called away and he's out of town. So that is where I'm going to read from, is when Garrett has to leave town and kind of leave her in the lurch. She's on her way out to her daughter's wedding shower, and the sheriff has kindly helping her bring out all the cases of wine and all the food to the shower. And of course he makes the mistake of asking, as men often do, of just like bluntly saying, have you heard anything from Garrett? And that sends her into this flashback. Frankie was leaning against the truck, scrolling through her phone for messages or missed calls. 6 days. Had it been less than a week? Less than a week since life shifted? Frankie recalled the details, reopening the wound all over again. Just past Easter, Garrett's old partner from the St. Louis County Morgue in Duluth reached out to ask him for his help. Several unsolved murders had plagued the city for months, prompting officials to reach out to other law enforcement agencies for assistance. Danny, a medical examiner who had assisted Garrett for 5 years before taking over his post, had poked, prodded, and cajoled Garrett for days. Garrett's answer remained a resolute, no, thank you. I'm not licensed in Minnesota, he'd reminded Danny. Besides, my life is here. Frankie's thoughts turned to the quiet Wisconsin winter before the Danny season. Garrett and Frankie had spent those cold months tenderly cultivating their romance. The two enjoyed music and theater productions at the Overture Center, double date dinners with Carmen and Ryan, snowshoeing the area parks under a moonlit sky, and romps around Garrett's property with Freya, his Norwegian elk hound. He learned enough about grape cultivation to be dangerous, and discovered new connections to the natural world thanks to Frankie's vineyard and birding know-how. He even learned to make Frankie's signature Kringle, sort of. Garrett had become positively gooey when Frankie's fingers worked his hands through the dough, radiating warmth, strength, and tenderness. The couple basked in the comfort of a promising future. Frankie turned Garrett into a believer again, and he did the same for her. When Sophie and Max announced their wedding plans, Garrett and Frankie felt more encouraged to bend in the same direction. Then everything shifted 6 days ago, when Frankie prepared to open the wine lounge for Sunday afternoon tastings. April's ending brought rising temperatures and spring blossoms, both of which make people itchy to be out and about. It was far too early to plant gardens in northern climates, so outings of all sorts ruled the day, especially on Sunday afternoons. Bubble and Bake saw more customers, a precursor to tourist season. When Frankie opened the door, a few people were already waiting outside. She and Jovi manned the wine lounge, giving Frankie's mother, Peggy, a rare Sunday off to spend with friends. Frankie dispersed tasting menus while Jovi was preoccupied in the kitchen. She began with a group of 4 sitting together at one end of the polished walnut bar made from the slab of a once giant tree on the property Frankie's parents owned before her father had passed away. The tree was Charlie Champagne's favorite, and since her father had loved it, Frankie kept a piece of it to remember him by, a good omen for her new business. At the other end of the bar, Frankie heard someone clear their throat loudly, once, twice, again. She excused herself from the group and scooted to the customer at the other end, whom she assumed was waiting for the rest of their party to show up. I'm sorry, I was just settling in the other group. Can I get you a tasting menu, or are you waiting for others to join you? I'm here to meet Garrett Iverson. The woman held out her hand in greeting. I'm sure you know all about me. I'm Danny Edwards. Frankie couldn't conceal her astonishment and attempted a clumsy recovery. Oh, no, I mean, yes, of course Garrett told me about you, his former partner at the county morgue. Inside, panic erupted. Why didn't she know Danny was a woman? And why didn't she know Danny was coming here? So, Garrett could be in a little bit of trouble. There's definitely a story within a story, because as Garrett goes off to Duluth to try to solve this murder, Frankie also, anyway, she sort of gives him a couple little ideas, and so it kind of bounces back and forth between him and Duluth and little bits and pieces, and her trying to work through this, what is this health crisis that is plaguing this community, and is her daughter going to be able to get out of quarantine early enough to have the wedding, to pull off the wedding. So there's a lot going on in book number 5. And then last fall, I started a brand new series. This is Faye Browning. She is a literature professor at a small private college just outside of Madison. She's young, so this series, this is my sweet series and this is my salty series. So, this is a little edgier. The Medusa is a murderer and a serial killer, okay? Even though, when I say that though, even though it's edgier, there isn't any violence that happens on the page. There's nothing gory and graphic happening on the page. Everything happens off page, similar to my sweet little cozy mysteries. But it's definitely got a different kind of a flavor to this series.
Would you consider that still a cozy mystery, or not? More like a mystery?
I'd say it's more of a traditional mystery, okay. But it's a blended, which I guess that's what the powers that be and the publishers are calling them now, is a blended genre. There's a little bit of paranormal stuff going on in here. There's yeah, I mean, very little. Let's see. Let me see if I can drag us into this. So this series was born out of the fact that I'm a retired high school and college teacher, and I really missed teaching literature. Missed having discussions with my students. I missed, where can you talk about classic literature and poetry and plays in Shakespeare where people are going to care, or not look at you and go, I don't remember any of that from school, sorry, so I decided, since I was missing it, I thought, I could write a series with literature as a focal point in some way or another. So I started with mythology. Mythology was one of my favorite classes to teach, and my students loved it, and so we had great discussions, and it just was a high energy class, and I thought, well, mythology would be good to blend into a mystery. So my main character, Bae, is the youngest person to ever become a department chairperson at her college. She's only just over 30, and even though that might seem like kind of an impossible thing, she grew up in a kind of as traveling all over the world. Her father was an anthropologist, and so she had a lot of tutors. So she ends up graduating from high school at a very young age, and then going to college young, and then getting her PhD very young. So she's a pretty studious sort of a person, and kind of on the serious side. She doesn't want to be an amateur sleuth, let's put it that way. She would much rather curl up in a chair by the fireplace and read a book, or close her office door and grade student papers, which I know sounds like crazy thing, but but her world starts to kind of unravel. First of all, her sister, who is an ex-con, shows up on her doorstep, and she is fresh from prison, on parole, needs a responsible adult to live with, and Bay is the responsible adult. So these two have been estranged for a few years, ever since her sister started living a life of crime. And so now, you know, there's a lot of edginess, a lot of tension in their relationship. Bay does agree to let her stay with her, but of course she has a lot of house rules that she wants to follow. And then immediately enter into that this killer called the Medusa. The Medusa is leaving clues for Bay. And because she's leaving clues for Bay, Bay is pretty sure that somebody, either her or someone in her family, is a target. So now she's kind of forced to team up with her sister and get to the bottom of this crime and find the Medusa before the Medusa finds them. So there's a lot of references to mythology. The clues that are being left for Bay are in the mythology and art history world. A lot of them are attached to different kinds of paintings and then mythological stories themselves. There's a detective in the book who certainly doesn't want her help, but then the police chief steps in and says, we should make her a consultant. She knows all about mythology. Let's bring her in on the case. Well, so there's also more tension between the detective and Bay, but also some chemistry. So there's a lot of different little things going on in this storyline too. And then Cassandra, her sister, seems to also have some sort of, she's got a little paranormal extrasensory perception going on, and I don't want to get into that too much, but it shows up at relevant times during the course of trying to get to the bottom of this murder. So I'm going to just read a little bit from the beginning of this one. Bay is on her way back from a college meeting, and she's pulling up to her apartment building, and this is Cassandra's very first day that she has lived with her. The afternoon rain morphed into evening snow flurries, spinning circles that mimicked Bay's thoughts. She absently maneuvered the gray Subaru down College Avenue, left on Grand, back to Windflower Gardens on Hawthorne Way. She pulled up short of the parking ramp, and her jaw dropped. Red and blue lit up the front entrance to her building, courtesy of two squad cars idling there, lights aglow. So, Cass has already violated her parole. So be it. Bay couldn't process why her stomach flipped like the swirling snow illuminated by the headlights. Hesitating a moment, she decided to enter the garage and park as normal. The ride up to the 10th floor was too short for Bay to determine her reaction. What would she say to her father? Would his broken heart ever mend? First Mom, then Cassandra. Bay's mother, Penelope, died when Bay was 10. Her leaving created a void as wide as the heavens for Barrett. He tried to be a good father, but mostly buried himself in work. Literally, in fact, since he was an anthropologist who worked with archaeologists all over the world. Sometimes his daughters lived with him during his field work. More often, they lived with Auntie V in Chicago. Familiar ding cut into Bay's thoughts. She gazed at her apartment door for telltale signs of police activity and found none. The key clicked in the lock. She gingerly entered what used to be her peaceful haven. She found Cass and her father seated on the sofa, looking up at her expectantly. The police just left a few minutes ago, Barrett began. Bay plunked her purse and tote bag onto the tile by the sofa table. Ha! I knew it! She glared disgustedly at Cassandra, who shrunk back in surprise. Something gave way inside Bay. What did you do this time? You're out of prison not even one day, Cassandra. Cass's and Barrett's expressions made her pause midstream. Cops weren't here for me, sister. It's you they want to talk to. And they'll be back with a search warrant. So you better get your crap together and get rid of whatever it is they want. They couldn't imagine anything she had in her possession the police would want. She collapsed into the oversized reading chair by the fireplace, head in hands, thinking. Ignoring her sister, she addressed Barrett. "What did the police say, Dad? Exactly, if you can remember." "They asked if you were home. Said they must talk to you. When I said you were at work, they asked to look in your closets. I asked for a warrant and they left. Officer Downey left his card and asked you to call as soon as you get home." Barrett handed Bay the card from his shirt pocket. She exhaled a whoosh of air in relief and read the card. "I guess I'll call Officer Downing and find out what this is about." She offered a peevish glare toward Cass. "So they want to look in my closets. Any chance you stashed something there?" Cass shook her head. "I did not. And if I were you, I wouldn't call that officer. Cops can't be trusted." Of course you would think that, Cass. Bay had no reason not to trust the police. She pulled herself from her purse, walked into her bedroom, and shut the door. "Detective Downing, this is L.L. Browning. I received a message saying you were at my apartment and wished to speak with me. How can I help?" Bay delivered her practiced, mature, and professional voice, the one she used to land her job at the college. Downing wasn't impressed. "Yeah? L.L. Browning? What's the L.L. stand for?" Suddenly, Bay felt like a student with a new teacher reciting roll call. Her first name, Lullaby, was concocted by her dear sister Cassandra, but sounded more like a barfing whale when strangers tried to say it. Of course, now she was all grown up and had rebaptized herself, no longer living in a fairy tale world with a sweet sister and darling mother. "LL is the name I go by, if you don't mind, officer." Bay was displeased. She sounded contrite. "That's detective, not officer, Ms. Browning. I'll cut to the chase. Did you pick up dry cleaning today at Giorgio's Tender Touch on Grand Avenue?" Bay laughed. She couldn't help herself. She never used the full name of Giorgio's business, and hearing it come from a police detective who had a provocative voice conjured a massage parlor as something more steamy than dry cleaning. "Is something funny, Miss Browning?" Bay snapped back to the matter at hand. "I'm sorry, yes, I picked up dry cleaning today around 3:30 from Giorgio himself." She tried to be precise, to be helpful. "Right? Where's that dry cleaning now?" "Oh, so that's why the police wanted to look through her closets. It's actually in the back seat of my car. It's been a busy day and I haven't had time to bring it up." She pictured the untidy clump in her back seat, likely wrinkled, warranting yet another visit to Giorgio, who believed himself an Adonis. "You haven't touched it then, or removed it from its wrappings?" Downing was pumped. Bay affirmed. "Can you meet us in the parking garage by your vehicle in 15 minutes? Bay agreed, but as soon as she disconnected, she flew to the elevator, pushed the button for the lower level without a word to her father or Cass. She intended to check out that dry cleaning for herself.
I'll take two. My sister will love it too.
Are there any questions I can answer for anybody about anything?
Sorry. You do it. I mean, like, you got one book here and then you got, you sort of were writing them at the same time.
I was, because I wrote this one and then this one was in editing, so I was trying to edit and polish it and then started this one at the same time. And I would say I wouldn't recommend it. It's not easy it's a lot easier to stay in one world. There are a lot of authors who do this though, and so, I really admire them because it's hard. So when I was working on this one then and finalizing it, I just only worked on this one, and so now I'm working on the second book in this series, and I'll probably do the second and third in this series and then go back to Frankie. I know that's a question a lot of people ask.
So you're not done with Frankie?
I was wondering.
I am not done with Frankie, and also my husband and I have had a lifestyle change, and we are full-time RVers, and we started that it's almost 2 years ago now. So now that I've been traveling around, and I keep a writing journal wherever we go. I write notes. Anytime I overhear a fun conversation or people talk about things that are very regional and they're things I've never heard of, I ask questions and write down that quirky kind of stuff, because the kind of stuff I love. And, or, you know, we see some weird things sometimes, I write that down too, take a picture if I can, but I can't always. But, so I was thinking that it would be really fun for Frankie to have a chance to travel. And so I was thinking about a spin-off called Deep Lake Departures. And she can travel with different people in her crew and in her world. And so there's definitely going to be a murder at a wine convention for sure, because she is overdue to go to a wine convention. She has this vineyard and now she's had it for several years. So I need to write her into the wine convention. And I've talked to a lot of vintners I've talked to plenty in Wisconsin, but now I've talked to people in Illinois, people in Michigan, Indiana, and out in the Finger Lakes region. And so now it would be fun to have a kind of a national wine, or at least regional wine convention that she could go to. And there's a wine author whose name is Natalie McLean, and she's from Ottawa. And she interviewed me because she found my books, and she does a podcast, and it's just called Unreserved Wine Talk. But she said, I thought it'd be fun to interview an author she goes, you know, I interview wine people all the time, and that kind of gets boring. So I thought it'd be fun to interview an author who writes about wine. So we had such a fun conversation, and she said to me, I have so many ideas for you to kill people if you ever want them. And I thought, okay, so now I have someone I can tap into, and I can say, how would this work? Give me an idea, because she's like, you have no idea how they process some of these things and how they store them. And I'm like, okay, body in a vat of wine in a wine barrel, exactly. I mean, that could actually probably be funny. I mean, it's like, if murder can be funny, yeah, it could definitely be funny. So I thought about that. I thought about her going on an RV trip of her own, because we certainly have had some interesting things occur during an RV travel. So yes, oh yeah, absolutely. So I think that would be something fun she could do. And I already have an idea for her and her Aunt Cece to go to Ireland to do some family searching, and that has nothing to do with me wanting to go to Ireland.
Research for your book.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm thinking that there's definitely more things happening for her. I mean, you know, she's evolved a lot as a character. She's become a lot more confident as a sleuth, and she's become a lot better at it. Because in the beginning, she just shows up with bakery and thinks people will answer her questions, which does work, by the way. If you ever have bakery or a bottle of wine and you have questions, you probably get answers. But she's certainly come a long way in her sleuthing, and of course she's brought a whole crew with her, which just makes it a whole lot more fun. And so I've really enjoyed watching the evolution of the series take place. And it may sound strange, but characters really do speak to you. They start telling you stories about where things should be going. And if I'm writing and it doesn't feel authentic, I can hear them saying, you know, I would never do that, right? You know, I wouldn't say that, right? Or I would be totally over that police tape, right? Why are you making me behave? So it becomes very fun to inhabit their world.
I don't know if I missed it or not. Did you mention why you started a new series? Like, what prompted that?
Yeah, I was missing teaching literature with my students.
Yes.
I was.
And actually, I mean, that whole genre with mythology is huge right now.
Are you using Norse and Greek mythology, or a combo? Or
I used Greek mythology and a little Egyptian mythology in here, but I'm a big fan of Norse mythology, and I can see that coming. The next book is all Shakespeare, so it switches gears to a Shakespeare theme. Bay is doing a summer theater production at the college with some other professors, and it's Shakespeare in the Park, but this is Shakespeared in the park. So it will begin with a skewer and it will go from there. And it'll again be, I mean, I think that's one of the reasons why it's less cozy. Usually with a cozy mystery, you might only end up with one victim, and this has multiple victims, and the one coming up will have multiple victims too. There's just definitely motivation behind these killers that is a little darker and a little more devious and personal, I guess I will say. So, and then the next book in that series is it'll focus on poetry, or it'll have a poetry theme, and then maybe I'll go to Norse mythology. I love Norse mythology. It could be very fun. The ideas are already coming.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Guess how much the play for the second one?
For the Shakespeare one. Well, and that's one of the reasons why the Shakespeare one is coming on a little slower, because I decided that instead of doing one specific Shakespeare play, I thought that it would be fun for Bae to have written a Shakespeare parody where it's called Shakespeare's Couch, and she has different famous people. A lot of them are couples, but some of them are other just famous characters as a collection of famous Shakespearean characters, and they're all going to be on stage on the couch like a talk show, and they're going to be talking about their own relationship problems, and they're also going to kind of roast the bard himself and say, like, I don't know why we were written this way. So once I started including that in the book, then I thought I should probably write at least some of that script, which I think it's maybe a little much of an undertaking, but there are people who said, "Oh, you totally need to finish the script, and then you need to have the script as an accompaniment." So, right now I'm planning on Shakespeare being out in January, but so I think the script I'm going to just have to set it aside and get the book written first. I mean, you can only have so many irons in the fire.
Do you have a writing regimen? You said you're full-time RVing. You're always looking for fun facts and things that you might use. Are you able to turn that off? Or, I mean, do you just write at a certain, like morning, afternoon, or whatever? How do you do that?
Yeah, I do. I definitely have a regimen, because if you don't, it's really easy to get distracted or to procrastinate. And this summer I've been doing a lot of book events. We landed in Wisconsin in early May, and it's kind of been nonstop. So I've had minimal writing days because of that, because it's just like too many, it's too scattered. And you do really have to focus in. So I just started getting back into the Shakespeare book again, and I like to write in the morning. I like to work out in the morning, then write, then take a break and take a walk, then write in the afternoon. So that's what I like to do. My husband is working full time from the RV anyway. He's a software engineer, so we work 6 feet from each other, and it works. I mean, and most of the time. I mean, sometimes he has meetings via Zoom, and then I know all his office people, so then they play fun games like, who am I killing today? Or if he showed up late one time and they said, we thought maybe that Joy did you in, and so I do have to run over and usually say hello to them, but but writing, it doesn't matter where you are, you still have to focus inward. I mean, I could sit outside and be distracted by birds and butterflies and flowers and people walking by. So it doesn't matter where you are. If you're gonna write, you gotta go in, and you gotta shut everything else off. And I don't know, I'm not sure why I'm good at that. I grew up in a big family, and I was number 6 of 7, but my older brothers teased me all the time. And so I think there was enough distance between us, and I didn't have any, we lived in a neighborhood where there really weren't any kids. So I kind of went into my own world a lot, even when I was growing up. I mean, I wrote stories and I didn't have one imaginary friend, I had many. And I mean, I had a lot of company with my,
I was
yeah.
one of them.
But yeah, you were one of them, yes. So I think I think it just was part of my makeup. It just kind of came with the territory, and maybe it was just because I was in this big family, but didn't really have a lot of kids to play with, and just kind of invented my own world. I know that sounds crazy.
How long did you want to be a writer before you actually wrote your first book?
Yeah, I never wanted to be a writer. I didn't. I loved teaching, and I really loved teaching writing, and I did like to write. I would journal. I kept a journal, and I would write. I wrote some little pieces that were more essay kind of pieces and things like that. I would write with my students because I figured that they really needed to see me writing if I expected them to journal. That's why I was journaling too. And my husband kept telling me that I was good at it and that I should write a book someday, and I said, I'm not doing that. So when I retired though from teaching, I retired and went to part-time, and I had just so many hours in the day, and I think it just gave, and taking away all that full-time teaching stress, I think just opened up my creativity, and it kind of just all happened. So the first one happened very organically. Things just came to me. I can't even say where, just out of nowhere. And so I didn't even outline my first book. I just sat down at the computer and started running away with it. And so I didn't even tell him, or I didn't tell anybody in my family until it was done. I didn't tell him until I was about 8 chapters in that I thought I was writing a book. I might be writing a book. Yeah, and then after the first one, I started outlining. I don't do a lot of plotting or planning. I do some character ideas of who the victim's going to be, how they're gonna go, and come up with motives, and then come up with a bunch of suspects, and then I kind of figure out, like, these are my characters who are going to be the suspects, and then throw in some of the red herrings to get people off track, and including Frankie, because she doesn't know either when she starts sleuthing at who did it really. And then so it's very loosely outlined that way, and then I just go to the computer and write from there. And sometimes things change. I mean, I've not changed the victim, but I've often changed the murderer, because sometimes something else, a better motive will come to mind, or better reason, better interactions, maybe a deeper level story. So I kind of listen to that as I'm writing, and see, oh, this looks like a better way to go.
So do you feel that the little characters that sit on Frankie's shoulder are kind of what you have that helps you develop your characters as well?
Yeah.
Because you kind of talked a little bit about how they talk to you, and I wouldn't say that.
Yeah, no, I think that's really